Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Black Ops 2 Zombies running on the i5-1135G7. Now this is running at 1080p at the lowest possible settings, and the performance on here is actually pretty decent. This was a very fun experience. I could play the game perfectly fine. You know, like I remember playing this when I was a lot younger on a much worse computer than this thing, really. So this is, if anything, a very good experience. Now, I did also attempt it at 720p, and you can hit some pretty high FPS there, but you do end up being very CPU limited, and the GPU kind of ends up doing a lot less. So I would really just recommend playing at 1080p and enjoying this frame rate here, you know, because you can hit some pretty high refresh rates if you play at 720p for sure, but the difference is you're getting a much lower resolution. So I would just take the resolution, and you're still getting pretty high FPS here and there, you know. So you're going to be able to have a good time. It's not that bad. Yeah, and we'll look at 720p right now. As you can see, the quality hit for 720p isn't too bad, but I just find it to not be worth the FPS increase, at least for something like Zombies. This was the multiplayer, that would be a different story. But for Zombies, I don't think you really need these increased FPS, especially because there's still going to be like huge fluctuations anyway. So you're not necessarily going to be getting the most consistent experience like this anyway. And you'll see the GPU is just not doing much. The CPU usage remains the same between this and 1080p. So that pretty much tells you that this game is just fully utilizing 1 or 2 cores. And that's it. And we're just hitting a CPU bottleneck there. Because I mean, remember the era when this came out. This came out when like the average computer had like at most 4 cores, maybe hyper-threaded 4 cores. The vast majority of people were at best gaming on an i5, which was at the time just a 4-core, 4-thread CPU. So if anything, the CPU on this laptop is actually just more powerful than like any CPU that was out at that time. So you could see the utilization is not that high, but for sure 1 or 2 cores are just really going ham there. And you'll see the GPU is kind of just chilling for a lot of this. So I would just go for the 1080p.